You throwing me a bone or just ignoring me? Dan, where's this falling in on the agenda?
You put this first.
Okay. All right. So that'll be. So how do we approach that one when we call this meeting to order here shortly? So you'll bring it up. We'll make the motion to add it to the agenda.
All you gotta do is say city manager.
Yeah, you can
disagree. You can ask for a motion. It doesn't all in favor.
So where's the rest of the EDA? Should they be here to?
We just found out something this morning, so we gotta move this along.
Okay.
I'll call.
We have EDA members here?
It's 2:00.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, let me call this meeting of the Planning and Economic Development Committee to order. Your roll call, please.
Councilor Bell?
Here.
Councilor Herbstreit? Here. Mayor Smith?
Here.
All right. We do have the minutes from the prior meeting for consideration for review and approval.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve those minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. The minutes from the prior meeting are approved. I understand we have a green sheeted item here.
Public comment.
We have the public comment section. So that is a time for citizens to speak before the Planning and Economic Development Committee on items either on the agenda or just in general. Are there anyone here? And is there anyone here who would like to speak in the public comment section?
Perry. It's now or never.
Hearing none, and before Perry changes his mind, I've closed public comments. Now I understand we have a green sheeted item here which was not on the published agenda that needs to be added to the agenda. Entertain a motion to do so.
Motion to add the green sheet item. Update
right.
of schools administration building sale.
All right, I have a motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, and the presenter is City Manager Dan Hoffman and Director of Development Services, Sean Hirschberg. All right, so tell us what's going on, what's in front of us.
Thank you, committee. So we appreciate you bringing this, letting this green sheet item move forward. It's time sensitive in that, the big part of the reason why we made the moves we did when we did was so that we could get the building on the market as quickly as possible. Since then, though, the EDA has not accepted the property as outlined in the resolution that was passed on March 8th. In that resolution, you authorized the city to transfer the property to the EDA. In one of the sections, you authorized the city to it authorized approves a deed conveying the property subject to an MOU over to the Economic Development Authority. In the last Economic Development Authority meeting, they tabled the item. They did not outright deny or decline the item, but they did table the item. And since then, I've learned that there is a possibility that they will not accept the property at all. I won't get into the details for that because I have not had spoken directly with the EDA, and I don't intend to speak for the EDA. And I continue to be confused by some of the actions, including this one, of the EDA. So I would suggest, as a aside from the discussion we're going to have about this particular item, I would suggest a joint EDA and head committee meeting sometime in the near future to come to some type of understanding as to the expectations of council and in respect to their role in this type of setting. Because this latest development, will definitely cost us some time, because the alternative to the EDA selling the property as the city's de facto real estate arm, the result is the city will now sell the property. Requires some additional steps. There are some additional regulations that are involved. We've consulted with the city attorney to define a process forward as an alternative to the EDA disposing of the property. However, it will have to come, we will need a new resolution. We will also need to come back before council, and council, there will have to be a public hearing, and the council will also have to have is it a two-thirds vote? 2/3 of council will have to approve the sale of the property. The most near-term step that we'll have to take, if it is the will of the committee, is to put a new resolution in front of the full council at the next meeting, which is April 12th, and which will then start the process on the city side of selling the property. Happy to answer what questions I can answer. Also with me here, Sean Hirschberger, who, as you all know, acts as the executive director of the EDA.
Okay.
Happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right. Any questions from committee members?
Yes.
All right. David, go ahead.
Sean, can you remind me what the mission of the EDA is?
I apologize, Mayor. I don't have it. I don't have that written in front of me at the moment. But it's summarized. It's to aid and assist in fostering a strong economic growth and economic sustainability for the city of Winchester.
Say it again.
Summarizing, it's to work together with the city to foster economic growth and create sustainable economic activity for the city.
Work together. That doesn't seem like that's what's happening now. I thought once we adopted this and sent it on to the EDA, like we have other things, that it was said and done. This is a slap in the face. And we're at a crossroads now where something has to be done in a timely manner. Very disappointing. They give you any reason?
So again, there was never a vote taken. It was just the item was tabled. It was not addressed in their meeting.
But what about this newest information from this?
Well, just in conversations, I think that's what the city manager was alluding to. Just conversations. There seemed to be some reluctance. There was a desire to have some conversation as to what wanted to be done with the building, as opposed to just selling it. Just selling it for the highest price. But yeah, the idea of just selling it, there was clearly some apprehension stated about that.
Do you have any other questions?
No, go right ahead.
Ken, how about you?
Not right now.
I mean, I would just echo, I think it would be good to have a joint meeting because I think we both need to clearly better understand. I'm looking at the description right here. So it is, I guess, disappointing, and the timeline has been impacted as a result of that, and it would have been helpful to kind of, I don't know if we could have gone down this road a little sooner to be more proactive, but maybe that's what the meeting will help us do for future. So, yeah.
All right. So the questions that I have, because I mean the MOU that we have with the school division was pretty clear, and that's existed since 2020, I believe. That was the date of that. Was August of 2020. The MOU was pretty clear no, it was very clear that the goal was to dispose of the property, to sell the property, to take the net proceeds with a guaranteed floor and contribute those proceeds back to the Winchester School Board's budget to offset their expenditures for the overage on the cost for the project. So yeah, I do think a meeting to understand if there was a strategic shift in the thought process of what school division and the city council were to do with the building. Yeah, that would have been good to know 3 years ago.
I would say in the 3 years ago, the EDA was never a party to that discussion
Okay.
in 2020. So that's, I think, I think that's what they would respond to you in regards to that.
But I don't think it would be inaccurate to say that they were aware of this, especially given the coverage in the newspaper, and I know Sean
Okay.
keeps them up to speed. So they might not have been aware 3 years ago, but they definitely were aware.
So again, a lot of this could probably be addressed at a joint meeting, and I think that is very helpful to plan for. So what's happening right now, or what's in front of us right now, that changes the disposition process. It doesn't, it's, whether it's sold by the city or sold by the EDA, it gets sold. What changes in the disposition process that we need to be aware of? And then this to follow, this goes as a resolution to the council to modify the resolution to say we're not going to dispose it to the EDA, we're going to dispose it by the city.
That is correct.
Does that resolution require a 2/3 vote?
I don't know, that resolution does not require a 2/3 vote. It's
Okay.
when we actually come to the point where the council votes to sell the property
Got it.
to whoever a responsive bidder might be. That's further down the line.
Okay, but so the disposition process though is the city can sell it just as easily as the EDA.
I wouldn't say just as easily.
Okay.
There are definitely more hoops that we need to jump through. Mary Blow's been in discussion with the city attorney as to what that process will look like. So provided this committee moves forward or directs us today to move forward a new resolution to council at the April 12th meeting, Mary and Sean will work together on getting the city positioned to sell the property. And unless council directs us differently, our intent stays the same.
Right.
Initially, the schools, school board and council agreed we're going to sell the property, period. We were not anticipating putting conditions on the sale necessarily. We're not considering putting things such as build by dates or directing them what can or cannot be put on the property. Our intent was there's an existing building, office building in the site. We sell the building and the property in the building. The end. So
Right.
that remains our goal because we don't intend to get into a development project per se with this
Right.
property.
And also convert this back to a taxable asset.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So again, the goal as defined in the memorandum of agreement is to dispose of the property. That's it. Clear as day. All right. So we can express our disappointments or our frustrations, but at this point, you're prepared to move this forward?
Can I,
Yeah.
before you make a motion or recommendation?
No, I was gonna make a motion because I still had a couple more comments.
Okay.
I would like to add, with regards to the joint meeting that happens, is I would be interested in, and I think not only for this committee, but even for the full council, is kind of an update on the status of where the EDA is at. I mean, when I look at the objectives here, it says identify targeted industries suitable for recruitment and attraction efforts, identify and facilitate new infrastructure development to enhance and stimulate the development of local economy, identify and work with owners interested in developing properties. I mean, it goes on, and I would like to know where are we at with those objectives and those strategies. Very much talks about the workforce develop its fullest potential. Like, I'd like to know where we are at. Where is the EDA? Where is the EDA at with regards to those objectives and those strategies? So I'd like to, when we have that joint meeting, I'd like for that, not to just come in and talk about what happened here, but I'd like an update on the status of where things are at.
Understood.
Thank you.
So, this truly sets a bad precedent. And I'm just reflecting on how many times that the EDA was in a bind and they had to have things pushed through quickly to meet a timeline and council obliged. And for this to come back to us at the 11th hour, like I said before, I'm not happy, and I'm sorry you have to sit here and listen to this.
I completely understand.
But whether you sit here or either across the hall from each other, you're going to hear one way or the other. But,
Absolutely.
and I agree with Councilor Herbstreit that when we do have this meeting, that there needs to be some way that they can address some of the objectives that they have there, because if they have these objectives and they're not even sticking to them or meeting them, then that's problematic. They probably need to review their mission. And so.
Okay.
If I may, I will gladly put together a summary of activities and where we are from an economic development standpoint. Just didn't want it to the last word to be said that there isn't stuff being done on those fronts, because
Well,
there's
you
a
shouldn't
very-
be the one just doing it.
I
Your
understand,
board
sir.
should be doing it. Apparently, this is where it's coming from. So they need to be on board with those objectives.
Understood.
Okay. Do we hear a motion?
A motion to what?
I can offer up a motion.
Motion to-
Motion to direct staff to bring back a updated resolution for the sale of the school administration building. And the joint meeting, we can do that without a motion. You know, if there's no objection, staff will put together a joint meeting based on what we've heard today.
And-
The motion can
And
simply
this
be-
action basically forwards this from PED
Correct.
to council, not to come back to PED.
Correct.
With a
Correct.
resolution.
Yeah, which is why we wanted to do this today, rather than wait for, the next PED meeting or the next EDA meeting. Just go ahead and if it doesn't look like it's gonna go through the EDA, let's go ahead and shift gears so we can get this done.
Right.
Will we be within the timeline that?
Yeah, we'll be fine.
I mean, I don't think there's a specific timeline other than the more market exposure the property can
Yeah.
get, the better opportunity there is to sell.
Yeah.
So,
I'd like to make a motion, like Dan just said.
I have a motion to forward this to council as a resolution for the disposition of the central administrative office building by the city. All right. Any discussions on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion is forwarded to the full council.
Thank
at
you.
a future meeting.
And because it is a resolution and it was unanimous vote, we'll put this on the consent agenda unless there's any objection to that.
None by me.
No.
Okay, so now shifting back to the scheduled agenda, or the published agenda, we have in front of us a rezoning, an ordinance to rezone 17.34 acres of land, 1955, 2011 Valley Avenues and 535 Hillman Drive from limited industrial M1 district and highway corridor B2 with corridor enhancement overlay to highway commercial B2 district with corridor enhancement overlay and planned unit development overlay. Presenter is Tim Humans, but I understand the applicant is also here with us today.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did want to invite up the two representatives on behalf of the applicant. I believe the city manager mentioned they were trying a new approach with presentations to Planning Commission and to the committee and perhaps to council in the future, wherein the applicant takes a more active role in making their case to you for their project. So I want to introduce Andrew Basham. Basham, I asked you and I still
Second
got it
time.
wrong. And then behind me, Randy Crosby is with Echelon Resources. Those two organizations, Echelon Resources and Spyrock Real Estate Group, are working together on this project for actually 3 sites currently that have been in the comprehensive plan as a redevelopment site. So on the screen there, you can see kind of an oblique view with the 6-story brick warehouse kind of standing out there toward the upper right, and then in the foreground a number of other warehouse structures, including some that are cold storage. And so in all, the 3 parcels add up to about 17 1/3 acres. There is a portion of this site with the exhibit on the left. You see a large amount of the blue there. That is the M1 limited industrial zoning. Out closer to Valley Avenue, we have the B2 highway commercial zoning with the Valley Avenue corridor enhancement overlay. So this industrial M1 zoning is kind of residual. It previously extended back further into the subdivision where Beehive Way is shown coming in from that far left. And then to the north, HR zoning with PUD overlay, which constitutes the Stewart Hill and Pemberton Village, totaling about 300 apartment units there. And then to the south, medium density residential single family along Hillman Drive. So it gives you a sense, quite an array of zoning. And then in terms of the proposed zoning, they would eliminate all of the industrial zoning, change that to the highway commercial zoning, which would allow for PUD overlay, similar to what is there at Stewart Hill. The site has access on Valley Avenue. Currently the Elms, former Elms Motel, would become the main entrance, but they also have access, particularly more relevant to Phase 2, there on Hillman Drive, that provides a public street access out to the valley as well as down to Cedar Creek Grade. And this is where, okay, the comprehensive plan, the current one as well as the prior one, prior to the recent readoption, has called this site out as a redevelopment site. And you can see on the one side there, there is a representation of multiple buildings, but keeping the existing larger structure there that's close to the Winchester Western Railroad, but looking at creating more of a new urbanistic kind of arrangement with mixed uses. So we're happy that there's an application before you that proposes that. I'm going to turn it over to Andrew now to present some slides, and we have emphasized brevity.
Okay.
Thank you. Again, my name is Andrew Basham. My company Spyrock and Randy's company Echelon are partnering on this project. We're based in Richmond, Virginia. Over the past 10 years or so, we've developed approximately 5,000 apartment units in the state of Virginia, including new construction, adaptive reuse projects of historic buildings, affordable housing projects. We also have a large commercial portfolio. We own a few hotels. And we were drawn to this site approximately 3 years ago with an interest in solely adaptively reusing the warehouses, the Apple warehouses. In conversations with staff, we were asked to take a more holistic view, a global view, if you will, of the overall 17 acres and try and incorporate a master development project that would be more consistent with the comprehensive plan, the master plan, and the corridor enhancement plan. We've worked very hard over the last year to develop this plan, responding to most recently Planning Commission comments regarding some of their concerns related to the site design, and what you see before you today will reflect those comments. Planning Commission unanimously approved this project 2 weeks ago, I believe it was. And so if you want to skip ahead to page or slide 6, please, Tim, or whoever's in control. So building 1 and building 2 on this slide, the pink building at the top and building 2 is top left. Those are existing warehouse structures. Those are Apple warehouses. One is original to the site. The building 2 was built in the 70s. It is now historic by its age, and we are in the process of navigating the individual nomination process through the state DHR and the National Park Service. We believe we'll have that done later this summer, and that would free the way for us to take advantage of historic tax credits to redevelop those projects. Buildings 3, 4, and 5 are new construction buildings. I think it's important to note that this is a phased plan. The concept, if you look at ahead to page 8, and we'll jump back, but slide 8 rather, shows phase 1, which is buildings 1, 2, and 3. So that is pardon me, approximately 250 units in phase 1. And at some point, upon completion of phase 1 and stabilization, we would move on to phase 2, which is another approximately 190 units. So a total of 440 units, but that is over a 5 to 7 year time frame at the end of the day. Skipping back to page 7, or slide 7 rather, this is an exhibit that we put together for the neighbors behind us that demonstrates sort of existing conditions. It's somewhat difficult to see, but you can see outline of existing warehouse there on the upper exhibit. That is the limit of the current warehouse. So we're actually, the new buildings are being pulled away from the adjacent single-family homes in the back. We will be building 4-story buildings on the new construction component. And so with the pitch roof, in addition to that, that is certainly higher than the existing conditions of the warehouse. Moving on to slide 9, that will show you the entire project as it's built out, including buildings 4 and 5. Some examples of, rather than throw hypothetical elevations at you, we felt like with slides 10 and 11, we would show you essentially the character of the building that we would be building. Cementitious materials, metal railings, masonry components, multiple elevations, balconies on units. And this is a project that we built down in Virginia Beach, and both slide 10 and 11, you can see what that looks like. I'm not sure that we'll use those same color palette here, but generally speaking, that's the quality of the product that we would build. We've had a lot of questions about how are you going to take these Apple warehouses that don't have windows in the perimeters of them, because they're designed to be cold storage, and get light and air in there to provide quality units. And we've done this several times before in warehouse structures. So on slide 12, you can see some adaptive reuse projects that we've developed, including the picture on the left and the picture on the right actually won an AIA Architecture Award in 2021 for that design. That's a warehouse in Richmond. And what we are essentially doing is we'll be taking a central portion of the roof out of the building, and we'll create a well, and that will actually be open to the elements. So you can open your windows, we'll have plant material in the well, and that'll bring light and air into the units. We'll try and get as many windows as DHR and the National Park Service will allow us. As we like to say, it's sort of like having a third design partner in the mix, because we are subject to their criteria, which changes on a project-by-project basis. But we and our partners have been through this for the last 15 years on, I'd say, probably no fewer than 20 different projects in the state of Virginia, so we know the folks there, and we know how the National Park Service responds. Slide 14 shows you sort of the block plans of the units, if you will. We haven't fully developed these unit plans internally, but we have a library of units that we've used in different projects that we would incorporate into this project, and so that's certainly something that we will be working with staff on should we achieve this zoning and move forward. Slide 15 is the unit mix. There are two slight labeling issues that I would like to point out. The 1-bedroom loft and the 2-bedroom loft, those are units in the building 2. That is simply the footprint size of that building. It is a 2-story unit, so you want to take approximately double that square footage. And again, that's a very small component of the overall project. We heard from Planning Commission that some members were very supportive of 3-bedroom units and wanted to see more 3-bedroom units. We felt like the appropriate mix, generally speaking, for us is somewhere around 10% of our project, and we have, I think, 8% of our units are 3 bedrooms here. Slide 16 shows both our amenity square footage and our commercial square footage. We have approximately 20,000 square feet of commercial space, and we're heavily amenitizing this project, not only because that is a sort of market requirement these days, but also it allows us to achieve some density bonuses, which Tim will talk about. You can briefly flip through 17 and 18. We build Class A communities, and we do that regardless of the product type, whether it's affordable, market rate, workforce housing. We always want to put people in the same position to have access to the best amenities that we can build. And we're generally trying to hold these projects for the long term, and so when we build a quality product, the intent is to make sure that it'll last for its usable life. That is all the slides we have in here. I want to talk about real quick one of the commercial uses that we're excited about. We recently opened a urban winery in Richmond in an industrial neighborhood, a warehouse district. It's called Bramley Park. And we like the idea of doing that. It's a lot of outdoor space. Much of this site is in the floodway and in the floodplain. And the area that's out front, maybe if you could flip back to 6, the area that's out in front of building 1, we cannot touch that green space. It is in the floodway. We can't put any permanent impervious surfaces in there, and we can't develop it for parking or any other commercial use. So we like that because it's an outdoor space that can be activated and would be affiliated with ideally a winery or cidery, which would be in keeping with sort of the character of your city. And we would have events there. We have big weekends. It's a family-friendly environment, lots of dogs, kids, live music, those kinds of things that we think would be very successful in this environment. And of course, we'll answer any questions that you all have.
Okay.
Just
a lot to take in.
Yeah, just a couple other things to kind of wrap up. On the screen there's a couple of views. These are the accesses other than directly from Valley Avenue. So you can see on top the warehouses. Andrew mentioned that phase 2 would stay in that warehousing use while phase 1 is being built, and then would disappear as a use when they pursue phase 2. In the bottom image there, the property does have frontage on Douglas Street leading into the subdivision there. That's to the west, but they do not intend to have any connectivity there, although we have encouraged them to at least provide a bike ped connection there. There's some topography there that they'll need to traverse, but there is the park that's there near Park Place and Orchard Hill that would be beneficial to access. I know council in prior applications has questioned the density, and I thought this would be a good opportunity for you to see on a large development, 17 3/4 or and 1/3 acres, how they get from the 277 units that would be allowed at the base density of 16 units per acre there, up to the 440 units. And they do that by making use of the various bonuses, bonus density provisions that council recently boosted. You may recall former zoning administrator Frank Hopkins came to you with a lot of additional provisions. And so a couple of them that they're making use of, one is a benefit for bike share stations, and this site is conveniently situated just a little south of where stop 9 is there in that map, in the lower right corner. So it's a logical addition to the bike share network that the city's already contemplating. So that gives them about 14 additional units by having bike share station that has at least 5 bikes. So on a big project, what sounds like a small number of small bonus factor actually translates into quite a few units. One of the other ones they're making use of is the vehicle charging stations, and if you provide at least 3 stations, that gives you another 5% bonus, so that too is a 14-unit bump in the yield for a site that already allows 277 units at the base density. They are in close proximity. There's a bus stop right out in front of the former Elms, so they're able to make use of the transit to the oriented development bonus. And then they're also going to pursue some of the environmentally friendly construction in terms of earthcraft certification badges. And as Andrew mentioned, they're going to have a fairly rich indoor recreational amenity component that gives them a bonus as well. So that's how they get from 277 up to 440 on this site. And we've determined that they are eligible for that larger bonus based on the amenities, and that's based on a little under 500,000 square feet of total development, and then when you net out about 20,000 of the commercial and what's otherwise in the residential structures, they come out to about close to 12,000 square feet of amenity space inside. That doesn't count the outdoor pool or dog parks or anything like that. And so, excuse me, they have about 13,000. They would need at least 11,600. So they more than meet qualifying for those density bonuses. And be glad to answer any questions that the committee has on the fiscal impact analysis or the traffic impact analysis. And Mr. Eisenach is here, so if committee has any questions about the traffic generation, they did look at these 4 intersections that are shown on this one graphic, and then identified some improvements, including a southbound right turn lane into the site. That's the main entrance there where the Elms driveway is today. They've also kind of broken this out by phase and also looked at this in terms of whether or not council is supportive of the study that VDOT has underway now. They just got some very positive input from residents about a road diet for Valley Avenue between Middle Road at the south and Jubilee Drive intersection to the north, looking at the possibility of converting that from what shows up here as the before condition being the 2 lanes in each direction without a center turn lane to instead going with 1 main lane in each direction with a center turn lane and safer accommodations for bike and pedestrian. So that's all we have in terms of the formal presentation.
Okay. I'm sure there are, but any questions from the committee?
Go ahead.
Kim, go ahead.
Couple of questions. One, I would say it's good to see something happening with this property. I think that, you know, there's a lot that this can do from the standpoint of housing in our community. I always have to ask this question: will any of these units be affordable or workforce, or are they going to be all market rate?
I will answer that question this way. The median area income of the city of Winchester is around $82,000. That means a single person is making approximately $46,000 a year, according to HUD's definition of what an 80% earner makes. That means that person, if they spend approximately 30% of their income on rent, would have a max rent of around $1,275 for a 1-bedroom apartment. 2-bedroom, that is a family of 2 or 3 making on average $55,000 a year. Spend 30% of that on their housing. A 2-bedroom max rent would be around $1,525. I believe that our rents, certainly today on paper, will be at or below those numbers. Inherently, in these adaptive reuse projects, we will have smaller units. We will have units, I don't want to call them inferior, but they will be units that are funky, that are different. Those units will likely be below even those rents. And so we're under incredible constraints, as you can imagine, with costs and interest rates right now. And so while I'm not comfortable deed restricting anything, I do think that we will have workforce housing in this project for a couple different reasons, as I've outlined. And I also think that, we've talked about this with some of the other council members, we do preferred employer discounts. And, I think if there are, we could do something with the city of Winchester employees and things like that to make sure that, if that's a population that needs more workforce housing, that we can accommodate that. But at the end of the day, we are a for-profit, and we have investors and partners that we have to answer to. So I don't think this is a low-income housing tax credit location or site, but absolutely we are, we are incentivized to not push rents, because when we push rents too much, people leave, and when people leave, that's an expense to us. We prefer to, move our rents according to something like CPI or something like that. And so that's how we would handle that. I know that's a long-winded way of answering your question, but
Yeah.
that's the best way I can answer it.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. I mean, it sounds like you were at least familiar with the numbers and, those unique, smaller,
Yeah.
kind of funky units, like you said. I just think that, there is a need for workforce housing, there is a need for affordable housing, and not that this needs to be, low-income housing. We need to find a way, and I get that it's for-profit and all that, but the fact that you all are at least thinking about that is helpful to know. The second question that I have, and I don't know if Tim or Dan wants to respond to this, or maybe you can. With regards to the density here, how does that translate to fire and rescue? Has fire and rescue weighed in on this as far as the impacts to, I mean, we're increasing, everywhere. We've got, the locals, we've got this, we've got the old hospital, like the numbers of units are increasing, and I'm just wondering, where's the tipping point for fire and rescue to go, oh my goodness, we need a new station or another station. So where are we at with that?
I'll answer half of it. I'll let Tim speak to the site-specific issues of ingress and egress. We have sufficient capacity in both regards. It's right on Valley Avenue, and it's very approximate. I think the first due station would be Shawnee in this instance, but it could easily be backed up by South End, which is, if farther, just by a slight amount, with the additional staffing as well that council has approved. We're now putting more staff on units so we can respond more quickly to calls. We also are making investments in medic units, which is really the area where we are stretched a bit. So we're perfectly fine in terms of capacity to respond. Now, specific to the site in terms of turning radiuses and all that good stuff, I'll let Tim, if we've had those conversations yet, I'll defer to Tim, but it might be a little early for that.
Well, thank you. And before I get into those physical aspects, I do want to point out that part of the fiscal impact analysis is that they have to identify all of those per capita or per unit costs for things, government services, including fire and rescue service. So that is built into this, and I know Celeste has reviewed the fiscal impact analysis. So they are accounting for that and yet still coming out with a net positive to the city. So the fact that it's a net positive means that there's even more money to provide emergency services or other government services above what the demand would be here for those. In terms of the physical layout, all of that will come out with the site plan. This is multifamily only, so we won't have a subdivision per se, but they're private roadways. They'll be laying the templates down to make sure that emergency response vehicles can maneuver that.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that as we can continue to increase the units that we're keeping pace with our fire and rescue, and we're not going to stretch fire and rescue based on the number of units that are projected. So that's all the questions I have right now. I'm sure I'll have more.
All right. David, do you have any questions?
I really don't have any questions per se, but I have a couple comments. And first of all, I want to say great answer to the affordable housing and workforce question. I think we need to coin that because I haven't heard anybody answer that so eloquently before. And I know that's always a concern that we have some type of affordable housing, but when you throw in the incomes and salaries and what people are making, then that gives people a better understanding. And I noticed that in the staff report they address the traffic impact. I'm not a big fan of traffic impact studies because using some of the developments that we have, like Jubal Early and then the one across from John Kerr, where we've had people come out and say that there's going to be a lot of traffic in here and there, but it hasn't happened, and it doesn't generally happen because I know that with developments like this, Perry and his team, they usually look out for the best solutions of making sure that traffic flows in those areas. So I think this is a great project for that site that's been sitting there like that for years. And this is a great opportunity for us to start moving forward with some smart development. And those are all the comments that I had.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Smith. And yeah, I've got a few myself. And I too kind of applaud the scope and scale of this project, specifically the fact that you're able to adaptively reuse the two buildings. I know those will present some challenges both structurally and even as Kim alluded to, fire and rescue access. These are all multi-story, high-rise projects. So we do have tower trucks and ladder trucks, but understanding this, the new construction, I'm assuming all of that is sprinkled fire protection.
It'll all be sprinklered, and we'll meet all the building code requirements and fire code requirements for both.
And then
all
the
projects.
adapted apple plant would probably also be sprinkled, but if you're doing interior wells, I guess the fire company would look at external access. If there's access by a ladder truck, there's nothing to access on the outside if there's no windows.
That's a good point.
But that's outside of my specialty. I'm just pointing that out. So as I'm reading this, all of the commercial happens in phase 1, which is going to be embedded into the Apple plant, or
It is. There is some space inside that building that we believe we can use for commercial uses that is not going to work for residential.
Sure.
I mean, we've got the need, for example, in a restaurant, you have a kitchen, you have cold storage requirements, those kinds of things that can be back of house, if you will. So we're trying to push that into that space. We're also talking about the idea of taking some of the opened up basement space and making that into some sort of incubator. We've done it. We did a project in Richmond, an adaptive reuse project, where we actually took that basement space and we gave it to a not-for-profit. We leased it at $0 to a not-for-profit organization that throws birthday parties for underprivileged children. And now during COVID, they ran a school out of that space. So there's a lot of ways to use that space, and quite candidly, we haven't determined what is the best use for that space yet, but it will be usable, functional space, and I think it can be valuable. And we're open to anyone who's interested in taking that space.
Sure. All right, so phase 1 we've identified as 250 units in all the commercial, and we've shown the buildings. So 1 new construction at the location of the Elms, and then the 2 existing Apple storage buildings. The existing warehouses will remain as warehouses, and they will access to and from on what, Douglas and
Hillman.
Not going to hold you to this, but obviously when you have a phased project, ballpark time frame, I mean, the
Right,
market will
so
dictate.
our goal, let's say everything goes well, we would likely complete phase one in the 2024, 2025 timeline, and immediately thereafter start phase two. We're going to have to do a lot of the site work for phase two with phase one, road improvements, some of the utilities and things like that. So I think phase two would start right at the end of, let's say phase one is leasing up well, then I think phase two, we would probably start immediately thereafter. So that's a 2025 start, say, and probably a 2-year project. So likely 2027, but again, if interest rates are at 8%, we won't be doing anything.
Understood. And I was noticing in your unit mix that while you did have some 3-bedroom units, the predominant amount was 1- and 2-bedroom units, which I can certainly appreciate, and that does kind of narrow down the market opportunity there. I did notice there was like a 1-bedroom loft, which might be some of your wonky spaces you're thinking in terms
So
of.
the building 2 is about a 30-foot tall building, and so those units will be accessed directly into courtyards off of the parking area.
Okay.
You'll walk into a courtyard, there'll be maybe 4 doors, unit doors, and you'll walk into your space, and that'll be a 2-story unit. You have a living room on the first floor with a half bath under a stair. You'll go up, there'll be 1 or 2 bedrooms upstairs. So it's like a townhouse style, but inside and a warehouse building. We've done that successfully before.
And this is more of a statement than a question, because this came up at a recent council meeting. This is not seeking a 5-acre waiver. This project
no waivers.
completely fits within the PUD. And I mean, it'll be interesting to see how this dovetails in with the VDOT project and the Valley Avenue proposed improvements. But as far as your project, the only off-site right now anticipated is that turn lane, southbound turn lane?
While it's a big site, the amount of frontage that we have relative to the size of the site is limited. And we are willing to do anything on the portion of the frontage on Valley Avenue that we control, including decel lane, turn lane, and acceleration lanes. But we've got neighbors who we can't control, and we've got a car dealer and tire manufacturer across the street. We can't do anything with those properties, unfortunately. But yes.
And for the traffic studies, I mean, I know that's more of a traffic impact analysis. There's a lot of ways to get in and out of this project once completed. Is there any risk or possibility of a signal at the entrance?
Is that a possibility? Yes.
Okay.
Council can elect to put a signal wherever you want the traffic signal.
Don't give us that power.
However, I say that with a big caveat, though. It does not warrant
That's
a traffic signal.
That's what.
So my recommendation is that unless there would be a school there,
Mhm.
I will never recommend a new traffic signal be put at a location where it's not warranted.
Understood. Okay. And there's nothing that VDOT's actions on Valley Avenue would reach a separate conclusion on that?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Okay. I know that with this being a phased project and you're providing that access for the warehousing operation, during the phase 1 construction, is that that's going to be, when you're doing phase 2 construction, are you going to be limited to the Valley Avenue access point?
We do a lot of these projects. If you look at the site plan, actually, all of phase 2 is on one side of the access road internal to the site to get out to Hillman.
Okay.
So we will maintain that Hillman access, and we'll need that probably most likely for fire and rescue, and also for just for circulation.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one other question. So looking at the site plan here, there's a railroad track that goes through there.
On the side, yeah.
Right off to the side. And the reason I bring this up, because I had a discussion about this yesterday and this morning. Perry, how active is that particular track?
Not very active at all. There's maybe one train a day.
Is that like at 4:45 in the morning?
It's during the sleeping hours for most of us, yes.
That's why I bring it up. Okay, so since there is no traffic light there, since there is no traffic light there, how likely is the conductor to ring his bell at 4:45 in the morning, like he does on Kent Street, when you're building a development that close to the tracks? And the reason I bring this up, because we've had this discussion this morning, because we have some new developments coming up on Cameron Street, and the people that have been living there in that area for a while, they've adjusted to that.
Right.
But when you have new people coming in, and now that you know there's a train track there, is there any proposal for soundproofing on that side? And Dan, I guess back to you with there being no traffic light there, with the possibility of them bringing.
So, just the mayor and I had a discussion this morning about the crossing up at Kent and Piccadilly and Horn Blast there. If there's only one or so a day, that is an at-grade, public grade crossing. So federal regulations require that a conductor blow their horn, I believe it's for 15 seconds or was somewhere in that range, about within a quarter mile of the intersection. So if memory serves, where that crosses, probably once a day, you're going to get a pretty good blast. But it's once a day, so it's probably about as good as it's going to get. And barring, because I don't think there would ever be a need or a justification for some type of crossing arms. What's the right term I'm looking for here, Perry?
Yeah.
I don't think we would ever be able to alleviate it regardless of what went there. So that would be.
If I could just, that is a very lightly utilized line, and we have the 300 apartment units at Pemberton Village and Stuart Hill that are actually very closer than these would be, with windows toward the tracks. Really the closest building here is Building 1, which is not going to have the exterior windows to any great degree. And then the Willows Assisted Living is right beside the same line, as well as the Willow Lawn Cottages, which is, I think, 90 beds plus 120 cottage units. And I have not gotten complaints from any of the folks about train noise.
But are there crossings near those?
Yeah, the Harvest Drive crossing is right there in between Pemberton Village and the Willows Assisted Living.
Well, the only reason I bring it up is just take that into consideration, because you would hate for people to move into a really nice development and then realize that there's potential noise, albeit only one time a day, but
So I can assure you, they will recognize that when they sign the lease addendum in their lease that says this is adjacent to a train track, and it may be subject to the sounds associated with such track, including blowing of crossing warning horns. Because we own a number of apartment communities in Richmond, which has more train tracks than any place I've ever been, right up against the tracks, and we do the exact same thing there.
Perry, I think you need to add that to your CSX list that you keep on the phone.
There's a lot on that list.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's it, thank you.
All right, any other questions, Kim? No. I think this is a great project. I think we'll look forward to working with you on this. And again, the more that you can you can do to provide for the workforce housing, again, whatever label you put on it. I appreciate you breaking it down in the percentages of AMI. And it would be great if everybody actually limited themselves to 30% on their housing. There's some people living well beyond that, or not living well beyond that. And how this dovetails in with any VDOT improvements or VDOT approved improvements along Valley Avenue. I think that could be a real catalyst for this section of Winchester. I think it'll be awesome. So I guess we need a motion to move this forward from here.
Motion to forward with approval.
A motion to forward with approval is presented. Any discussions on that? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We're moving this forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is council action memo for proposed FY23 budget for development services and public services departments.
Thank you, committee. So today we are going to. Tim took the iPad.
Did he go home?
He's like, I'm sorry to be blunt.
You should not give him any electronics.
All right. Thank you.
And again, this is a presentation for input. Nothing's forwarded from here. This is
Purely, this is a discussion, a more detailed discussion of the two departments that are most relevant to this committee: development services and public services. I think we still have Mr. Eisenach over there. So if there are specific questions, we do have Sean and Perry here as well. If there's some specific, more detailed questions, that's the point of these committee discussions, is to get a little bit more in the weeds, but we don't need any specific guidance or action today. So if you're comfortable with what's presented, it'll flow right into the upcoming budget discussions. So we'll start right along. So today we're going to go over development services, which of course includes inspections, planning, zoning, Old Town, and the Visitors Bureau. And public service, our largest, which will include the general fund for streets and drainage, and the walking mall, refuse, facilities, highway maintenance, transit, parking authority, our maintenance fund, and our utility fund. So starting off with inspections, this is one of the 5 positions that we talked about a little bit on Tuesday during our last budget update. So that's why you see a pretty good increase for what is a relatively small department, because we are adding a maintenance inspector position. In order to help out a bit, they did tighten their belt and did find some cuts to help offset the expense of the additional position. This particular position is important. It was a high priority for that department. It's a relatively small team, an increasing workload placed on them, not just by additional development, but by some city manager priorities and council priorities, really warranted the extra position. So I'll keep moving through slides unless any of you want to jump. Yes, thank you, Celeste. We are also proposing an increase to some of the permit fees within this area to help offset some of the costs. It's hard to say exactly what the financial impact will be, but we do anticipate that it will most likely cover the vast majority, if not the entirety, of this position.
I did just get an updated revenue projection from Dave Parker, and he anticipates about $56,000 in additional revenue with the fee increases, so it would definitely help cover this position.
Yeah. And all those increases, they still have to abide by state rules around fees and increases. It has to be based on actual costs and so forth. decrease of $300. Nothing else new to report on this one. It's a relatively small team. We are actively, I think Councilor Bell made the comment on Tuesday. This is a team that is, I would say, fully maxed out. And we are, actively working with that team to try to understand, to try to accommodate the workload in a reasonable time frame, and plan for the future and changes that might be coming over the next several years. So we are actively looking at it. We haven't proposed a new position for this year, but it is very possible that we look at that in coming years as the dynamic of that department changes. Zoning, small operating increase to cover professional services for compliance monitoring. If you have any specifics about that, happy to bring Alfredo is here as well. Economic development, so it shows an operating decrease, but it's really the vast majority of that, as you can see, is a decrease because of one-time state funds, and a slight increase for 4th of July fireworks. We're bringing that back. I believe that we used to have them before I was here. It was cut previously, and now we're reinstating it. Old Town, again, an operating decrease because of the expired contract with U.S. Space Sports Marketing. That's the largest change to this, and what would otherwise be a smaller, what otherwise is a small budget.
So, question with regards to that?
Yeah, I think it's fair to hit these as we can.
Yeah, please.
So who's going to do the? Is these are the events that have been planned, and so who's going to? Now that that's gone, is there going to be staff that's going to be picking that up?
So yes, Alex Flanagan, she's transitioned to partially planning the events and staging the events. We also have a part-time staffer that's helping with some of the logistics of that. In addition, we're, I guess, a couple other things to touch on with that. We're encouraging private entities to do events and partnering with private entities, and also putting together a committee to help with events, to help with staffing and volunteering for events. So it's kind of a short answer is yes, it'll be internal. Larger answer is it's, there are several layers to how it's being put internal.
But you feel confident that with Alex and the staff that you guys will have what you need, and
yes,
that,
yes,
and because USA Sports Marketing contract, I mean, they did marketing, and did they do marketing and printing and all that kind of stuff? So that's going to then be on you guys, and you have a sufficient budget to do that.
Yes, and so Alex has already been doing the graphics, and she's been doing that since she got here.
Yeah.
And also a noticeable change that you'll see is, and this was kind of in light of a lot of feedback that we received, we're not going to be doing ticketed events that are kind of corralled into the Taylor Pavilion. They're going to be more free-flowing up and down Loudon Street, and actually planning one that goes outside of Loudon Street up to Piccadilly Street as well. So it'll be a different feel, something that events that feel a little bit more intended to feel a little bit more retail centric or engaging to the businesses, as opposed to just throwing a party just to have people down here, which was awesome. No, like they were very successful. It's just that, there was a desire to see some change there.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I heard was from businesses is that they would close up when there was an event because people were in the event. So if you open that up, and yeah, so that's good. Okay,
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure because that's a significant.
And also having most of the larger events are going to be transitioned to the DORA license, and I can't remember what that acronym stands for. It's the open container license that will allow people, it'll encourage people that are coming down for entertainment, if they choose to get a beverage, they won't be getting it from a beer truck. They'll be getting it from, a restaurant that's downtown and be able to carry it. So it's, again, more geared towards generating revenue for businesses, and obviously tax revenue as well.
Okay, I have more questions about that, but that's not for this, but at some point I want to go back to
Just,
that.
okay. Thank you.
Don't go away.
Uh-oh. Go ahead, yeah.
So, I'm very happy to see this because I know that Alex and the Old Town staff have been working closely with business and property owners, and they also have reached out to nonprofit organizations and those who normally put on events, and they've gotten together and worked on a calendar of events for the years. And this is something that we've been asking for a long, long time and haven't gotten it. I think now that it's put back in the hands of those who are down here, then they have been doing a better job. The events that they had before, they were more party type atmosphere, but they also kept people away that generally come down, and some of the businesses they did close up because those events weren't they weren't a good fit. And I think that that extra tax that the stakeholders pay, I think they'll start to see more bang for their buck now with this. So that's the hope.
That's the hope.
Okay.
Moving on. Right on.
Visitors Bureau, so there is an increase here to cover for contractual services for marketing and advertising. This is all offset by additional revenue. Small decrease because they transferred the trolley out, and you'll see this across a lot of the budgets. We're trying to reincorporate travel for training and different training budgets. A lot of that was cut during the pandemic, so now as we're able to slowly reincorporate that, we're doing that wherever we can.
Would that be consistent with pre-pandemic training and travel?
In most cases, we did. I think the pandemic was a good opportunity for us to kind of evaluate a lot of the training we were doing, because we still, for example, with fire and rescue, there were still mandated trainings, and that we really, it made us look at what is essential and why we were traveling to certain places for certain things. So I don't know if we're necessarily going back to the same cost, but we're looking at what is essential, what kinds of things could skip a year because maybe, for example, a certification just needed to be recertified once every 2 or 3 years. So when if those continuing education credits required for your certification are only required once every 3 years, we may not fund the same level every single year. So we're engaging in some of those conversations on a case-by-case basis as opposed to just a blanket restoration. All right. Now we're making the shift from over to public services, starting with streets, storm drainage. There's an operating decrease here. That's not to say that we're spending less on things like storm drainage, but we do have capital projects. Perry here can talk about a lot of those, but they did look for places in which we could trim costs there, and some small increases for general maintenance and the expenses, particularly around chemicals for the walking mall.
On that, because we tend to hear about stormwater management at the council level, either for issues and challenges that we have or with proposed development, so we're all very attuned to it. Where are we at in this with regarding maintenance staff specific to stormwater? And where are we seeing that in the prioritization for staffing?
Sure. So the general fund portion of streets and stormwater is very small.
Mm-hmm.
The budget is very small. The majority of the budget is in the highway maintenance fund.
Got it. Okay.
So that's where the staffing is.
Okay.
We have a need for more staffing for stormwater maintenance. We also have a need for numerous capital improvement stormwater projects throughout the city, which is why at the next finance committee meeting,
Drum roll, please.
yes, we're going to give a presentation on what those needs are. And does council want to revisit the issue of possibly implementing a stormwater utility where there would be a dedicated revenue source for stormwater? The simple fact is that the money that we get from VDOT to maintain the streets and stormwater is not adequate. It needs to be supplemented.
Okay.
And right now, that has been done by the general fund. But even so, we do not have a crew down at Public Works that is dedicated solely to stormwater system maintenance. They're also responsible for street repairs, sidewalk repairs. We have a very small staff at Public Works. We need a crew. Our stormwater system is enormous, and it's only going to get larger.
Sure.
You know, we're building this huge stormwater management pond as part of the Hope Drive project. That's going to require maintenance. We're going to be building these stormwater ponds up here on Kent Street on the CSX parcels that we purchased. That's going to require extra maintenance. So the maintenance is only going to increase, and the regulations for stormwater are going to only get more stringent in the next 5 to 8 years. It's going to require us to do more.
And we're probably going to hear more and more about it from our constituents too.
Yes,
So
correct.
what do we, I mean, I understand most of this as it relates to the stormwater issues is capital intensive. But from a staffing standpoint, are we attempting to address it in this budget?
Not in this budget,
Okay.
but it's because we just don't have the funding to do that today,
Okay.
which is why we want to have the discussion on stormwater utility.
Yeah, so just to sum, April 5th, stormwater utility discussion.
You already got my vote.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Tune in, because that's part of why we're not just adding staff, general fund staff. We'd like to hear what the council thinks about the stormwater utility. If the council outright rejects it, tells me that we're never going to do that, Perry and Mary and I will sit down and we'll figure out some other way, but I can tell you it won't be as sufficient as if we get a good dedicated funding stream.
Oh. Okay.
This, if I may,
Sure.
and you probably heard me say this before, but this can has been kicked down the road for such a long time, and in just about every development that comes before us, we're always talking about it, and it's like, who's going to pay for this? Who's going to pay for that? I would be supportive of this because this will be profoundly taking action to address the problem. Because as you said, it's going to get worse, and there are some creative ways that you can do the stormwater drainage these days. People don't even realize that's what it's there for. So, awesome.
Okay.
And if it's okay with the committee, Perry, real quick, we often get questions about specific projects, and Perry and his team are in the process of
looking at those projects and prioritizing them. You just give them a quick update as to where we're at in the timeline.
Sure. So we have a list of about 50 projects throughout the city that are needed. There might be a few of them that might be in the $100,000 range, fairly small. The majority of them are going to be $1 million plus projects. So we are putting together a comprehensive, detailed cost estimate of each of the projects and a priority system for how we have all this need. We can't go out and do all these projects tomorrow. We need to prioritize them. So we're coming up with a priority system to do that. We will have that. We're doing this all in-house. It's a significant effort. We will have it done by the end of this calendar year. And when that's ready, we want to bring it back to council. To do.
So that'll be the meat on the bones at
Yes.
that point?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Comment with that. I'm guessing you're probably doing this as well, but just thinking about when that comes forward to look at, it would be helpful to kind of know the timeframes, like, 2024 or 2026, and then if there's possible funding sources, like I know we try to tap into whatever federal or state funding that there is, and so if there could be a column on that as well, that table or that spreadsheet, whatever you're creating, the year that it would need to get done as it's prioritized, but also, where could potential funding come from and how much would we have to come up with? I think that would be, to be helpful looking at that big picture, because
Sure.
you're right, it's gonna be millions and millions of dollars and we don't have it, so we're gonna have to plan it out over 20 years, and then it'll be another 50 that needs to get done, right? So
Right.
we're always chasing the
Yeah. It's like sidewalks. We
yeah,
could-
yeah, exactly, yeah.
You finish the last one and start over.
Yep.
All right.
Perry, you might as well sit tight, because
I'm good
there will
right
most
here.
likely be questions.
We got one more
I
question.
do have one question. As we're going through this, we're looking at, maybe it's personnel services. What is included in that?
That's all your salaries and benefits.
Okay, so I guess my question is, and we haven't gotten to this yet, but is there gonna be an overall projected, I think we looked at it like a 3% increase plus a 1, is
It's
that
4.
incorporated in there?
Yes.
Okay, so it's already.
Yeah, it's already
okay,
baked in.
okay.
4 with a 1 or 2% merit.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
All right, moving right along. Refuse. This says operating decrease here, but okay, I see it's down below. So the rolling cans are out, as you've all seen. We have some stimulus money for a new trash truck. The fee will go up $1 per, as the council approved last year, but we still do have some other, that additional dollar. A lot of times folks ask, well, what's it being spent on now? We still will have, even with the truck we're getting through federal money, we will still need probably within the next few years another trash truck. Also, some of the other smaller vehicles need to be replaced too. So that dollar, it's not as if we're suddenly building up a war chest of refuse money. We still operate, if you looked at refuse as an enterprise fund, we still operate at a deficit. But in this year, we did have a capital increase to replace an older pickup truck and one of the smaller refuse trucks that will help us serve tighter streets in areas like the Walking Mall better. Facilities maintenance. So this is this one where we are making a significant investments. We do have 2 maintenance tech positions. Oh, sorry.
Since we cut
It's
out
down to 1. So in the current consolidated scenario we talked about on Tuesday, it's gone from 2 to 1.
2 to 1.
From
the maintenance.
positions, yeah. So it
Okay.
says 2 here. We just hadn't, when
Right.
we published this, we hadn't had that discussion yet on Tuesday.
So it's 1 maintenance tech.
Wait, so 1 instead of 2.
Gotcha.
And then operating increase to cover a litany of things that have been put off from upgrading phone systems to, sorry. What were you pointing out?
I'll say the city hall.
City Hall, furniture for this room. There's a number of different things in here.
Richard, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
So with that, the maintenance tech position going from 2 to 1, split the difference, so we have an additional 40,000 going back into operating.
Well, the 2 was based on the 0.5% meals increase, which was $750,000. So we had to take back out $750,000. So that's part of the 750 that we reduced.
So this is option. This is
Yes.
option 1.
This is option 1.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
got
when
it.
I put this together, I put together as option 2.
Okay,
originally
gotcha.
put together, yes. Yeah.
Okay, so when it comes back to council, then we're just gonna see a little finagling with the numbers?
Yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you.
All right.
The highway maintenance fund that Perry was discussing. The real increase here is we got a couple old pickups that need to be replaced, so it's 105 for that. Otherwise, it remains relatively the same. Transit fund. So keep in mind, much of the budget for this does not come through the city. Remind me what the general fund portion of Tran is?
Currently, well, normally we do about $300,000, but because of the CARES Act money, we don't have any general fund transfer for this year, or the current year, or this year, or the new year, so.
And
But normally it's
probably
about
the-
$300,000.
and probably the year
Yeah,
after
probably
that.
the next year too.
Yeah.
So about like a 3-year hiatus on having
Mhm.
the general fund have
Yeah.
to support this.
And we haven't even talked about infrastructure money yet. So
Right.
it's just looking at this in isolation really doesn't give you, I think, a complete picture of Tran and the various funding sources. But we know that there's a significant amount of additional federal money coming for Tran that we intend to use for the new garage, the new maintenance garage, and looking at electrifying the fleet.
So
Yeah.
I'm sorry, there is about $146,500 in here of general fund money that, as a match for the grants for the buses in the garage you was talking about, but not for operations.
So that was going to be my question about the electrifying of the position, the buses. So we need to replace 4 buses, get plus 2 new transit buses. What is the possibility of looking at electrifying the buses now and putting that into the cost and just making that switch? Are the electrical buses more expensive, or they?
Yeah.
They're significantly more expensive.
Yeah.
But we're looking at it right now.
Yeah.
We're actively looking at
Yeah.
coming
So
up with a plan.
when you say significantly more, so give me an idea of what a gas bus costs and what an electrical bus may cost, if you have the number.
I don't have the exact numbers, but I think the electrical buses are at least 2 times more expensive,
Okay.
at least.
It's consistent. We began electrifying the fleet before I left Gainesville. We operate the smaller cutaway buses. We don't operate the bigger, 45 to 60 passenger buses that you might see that DC and WMATA run. The industry focused a lot on those buses right up front. So a lot of these cutaway buses, they're basically modified Ford vans. So my sense is that, in the past research I've done, the industry didn't really look at those vehicles first. They looked at, Gillig and Ryan and all those companies that make them. They make the big ones. They're big enough to hold the batteries. They were looking at alternative fuels anyways, with liquefied natural gas buses and the like. I anticipate that cost will come down, which is why we're taking a look at it. The other significant expense is the infrastructure to support it, because these are buses.
we can't just put in, small charging stations. These are going to be, and the maintenance staff to, these buses will be, as anybody who's driven a hybrid or an electric vehicle knows, they operate very differently. So it'll be a big shift for us. The good news is that, the federal money that's coming is not insignificant. So I would say that this investment, and Perry and I and Mary talked a little bit about this. I'm comfortable with this now because of the potential of the significant federal money. I don't think we're going to miss out on anything, but it'll take us a little while to get there. And my hope is that by the time we do, over the next maybe couple of years, the cost for those vehicles will have come to something more reasonable.
Yeah, and the other issue with right now, the technology for the smaller buses like what we have, the amount of charge that the battery will hold will not last all day for our routes. So that's another.
So for this particular slide and kind of reviewing the numbers, I'm looking at the parenthetical local match 146.5, the 175, the 700, the 300. These are for replacement vehicles or new vehicles. That's stimulus money?
It's federal and state money.
That's federal and state money.
Yeah.
Routes
Mostly-
through our budget,
mostly
but it's not
federal
local,
money, yeah, with the
local
local.
match.
Yeah.
Okay.
The state match is the same as the local match.
Yeah.
The
So-
majority of it's federal.
So with the understanding that we're looking at future possibility of electrifying the fleet, what is, and we'd be 2 new buses and 4 replacement and a paratransit, I count that 7 new transit vehicles. How long do they last?
Generally 6-7 years before they get enough money.
Does this dovetail in with the electrification vision or image, or?
We're kind of at a place now where we need to replace our buses.
Okay.
They're at the point they need to be replaced now. We don't have the funding to replace them all with electric. We just don't.
Okay.
So the timing is not great, but it is, we're in this position and we've got to deal with it today. And the other thing that we're going to be looking at this year is potential changes to our transit system, where we're going to be looking at going to a micro transit system, which would change the way we do fixed routes into a system where we would go and we could pick people up at their house or very near their house. I think it would allow the transit system to serve a far greater population.
Like a
Simple, yeah. And
So the transit would either be positioned or be moving around town and then respond to inquiries and demand.
right.
Okay.
I think it's great.
Okay.
And Dan has experience from Gainesville and starting that down there, and I think we are the perfect size location to do this.
So back to this, just in the numbers, is what is our total fleet of Wintran vehicles?
Perry?
I think you're asking me all these hard questions that I should know.
Ballpark, 8, 9?
8.
8?
Yeah.
8.
So we're going to be investing in 7 new ones with a fleet of 8.
The 2 new ones are for the Lord Fairfax route.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But I view, maybe I'm reading into it, but I consider a replacement bus a new bus, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So new meaning we're adding to the fleet. So maybe the fleet is
6
going to
new
go
buses.
from 8 to 10.
To 10.
Got it.
Yes.
Yes.
I thought we started the Lord Fairfax.
We have not started it yet because we don't have a bus to run it.
They're hard to get these days.
And
Oh, yeah.
yeah, the lead time on vehicles right now is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Go
Are you
ahead.
done?
Yeah, we're getting kind of.
We,
drug-
by the way, we could do an entire, we're happy to come back.
Yeah.
The first mile, last mile microtransit system that Perry referenced, we could do an entire presentation on that for bid one of these
We
days.
still got a lot more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's wait till we get past budget
I
season.
do.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
do- I
in-
do- I
in
do
the
have a
summer we'll do
question,
that.
though. So are the new transit buses, I mean, there's 4 for $700,000 and 2 for $300,000. So is there a difference in those buses, the different sizes? Because the 4 at $700,000 is going to be more than the 2 at.
One of the 4 is a smaller paratransit.
There's a separate breakout for
Yeah.
paratransit.
If you can just look at that, it seems like, why wouldn't we just get 6 new for, it seems like it would be less expensive if they're at $150,000 each.
Just if
I think
you're,
there are some different sizes.
Yeah, we have a couple different
Unless
models.
they're-
we're
Unless they're
interpolating
different
unit,
sizes.
unit pricing here,
Right.
so that might be helpful to break out,
Yeah.
because, yeah, that jumps out
That's
a
all.
little bit. Okay.
Gonna
Let's
move right
travel
along.
down the road
The parking authority.
and park.
No significant changes reflected here. However, I think we will probably need to have a conversation with Head at some point about garage maintenance, funding for garage maintenance, and fees in the near future. But for the moment, nothing currently proposed. Nothing.
When you say
Significantly
tough with PED, would that not be funded by parking authority?
I would hope so, but that's what we want to talk to you about.
Okay.
No comment.
Comment right now.
All right.
The maintenance fund. So as I think you guys are aware, we consolidated a lot of our facilities and maintenance team into one team. So now Corey's team also does facilities and maintenance for parks. So you'll see that some of it has been realigned for better efficiency. So that's why you see some. That's why you might see some increases there. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
No.
Going to keep going. Utilities fund. So water does go up this year. So effective July 1, there will be an increase. There's already an approved rate increase. So that will be an additional almost 1.8 million. That will cover the increases in our costs. So this is an area that's also hit by inflation, chemical costs, we have maintenance costs, infrastructure replacement, and of course some vehicles. So that's how we intend to spend the additional revenue for the water utility.
Okay.
I have a question on that real quick. So especially during the winter, when we like the cost of putting down the chemicals and things for freezing, and the salt that we get, are we using salt as well?
Yeah, we
Right.
use salt.
Is there a different line item of how much that costs the
We,
city?
in the highway maintenance fund, we budget $100,000 for chemicals, salt, and we do put down some gravel, depending on the storm. But yeah, we budget $100,000 a year. Some years we don't spend that much.
Mhm.
Some years we will spend,
Every bit of it.
yeah.
Right. Well, the reason I bring that up, especially with the, I guess the liquid for the de-icing or the defreezing, or what do they call that?
Oh,
The pre-treatment?
yeah, the liquid that VDOT puts down on the highways.
Right, but do we do the same?
We do not.
Okay.
We've looked at that.
It doesn't work.
It does under certain, you have to have almost like the perfect storm for it to be successful.
But it looks good.
Makes nice
No,
lines
it's
on the
not.
road.
Some nice strips on there.
All right.
Okay.
I digress.
All right.
So we talked about the utilities funds. This is just the detail, the summary. In the backup, you have the line by line for every single thing. But this is the point where we're happy to take any input or additional discussion.
Excuse me. sorry.
We've had discussion on the fly, so let's see if we do have any additional one. When we were talking about the utility fund, are we complete with the meter replacement?
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
we are.
All right. Any other questions at this point? All right. Let's move on to the next item
All right.
or the next
Thank you.
category. Oh, we got that. We're all good. All right. So next, we have resolution to accept Commonwealth Opportunity Funds. Presenter Sean Hirschberger. Did Carrie take the iPad? No? Okay.
Presentation's going to take long, shorter than it takes them to get a presentation.
Okay. That's good.
Afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is a performance agreement with the Commonwealth Opportunity Fund, the Winchester EDA, and the City of Winchester for TFC Poultry. This is the site in question. It's 801 North Kent Street. This property had been, well, I guess it is technically still vacant for approximately 10 years at this point.
Is that the former cheese?
Former Sunshine's Pride Dairy, and there were a couple other names for the building before that. But yes, most recently, Sunshine's Pride Dairy. I believe they were only in operation there for
Months.
did you say months?
A couple of months.
Yeah, it was pretty brief, and been vacant ever since. So this is a breakdown, and I apologize for messing up the title on that one. This is a breakdown of the project. 111 jobs, average salary $51,315, total of $31,455,000 invested in the project. Incentive structure. Just want to make very clear because it has been floating around out there that that this was $2.3 million of a grant from the City of Winchester. That is not true. This is mixed between state incentives and local incentives. What we are utilizing is the Vacant Structures Revitalization Grant, which could be up to $700,000. That essentially is an all net new taxes generated on site incentive for a period of 5 years. So that's going to be machinery and tools in the real estate valuation.
As a rebate.
Yes, it's paid in arrears, so they'll pay it and then
Be refunded.
there's some shifting of money and they get a check. $25,000 grant for job creation, professional job creation grant, and an exterior improvement grant of $10,000. This is a solid use for a long tenured vacant building. And one other note to clarify some misinformation that still is out there despite all of the correct information being readily available and us trying to get that correct information out. They will not be having live animals. They will not be doing slaughtering. They will not be doing cooking. This is what they are doing.
It's a processing plant.
They're bringing in the raw product at 40 degrees, removing bones from the raw product, and shipping it back out at 40 degrees. It's none of the things that are being discussed about as being, foul smelling. And I didn't mean to use the word foul on purpose. But it is a very, it's part of the food supply chain. It's part of the agricultural supply chain, and which is why VDAX put in $500,000 forestry and innovations incentive grant for this. But just wanted to clarify those 2 points on this. And
I thought the former governor made that very clear when he spoke about it.
yes, sir, he did. It's still, anytime something gets mentioned, that information continues to pop up, and just wanted to take a moment to
Thank you.
clarify the details.
Okay.
And that is it.
All right. Do we need, any questions? Yeah, Kim?
This is maybe a little bit off, but can you go to the next slide after that? Or before, yeah.
Yes.
So new employment, I need to make the point here. New employment is gonna be 111 people.
Yes, ma'am.
The average salary of a new worker is $51,000.
Yes.
That's the average, which means there are gonna be people way below that, and there's gonna be people above that.
So their starting wage is anticipated at $17 an hour plus benefits.
Okay. I just want to make the point here, and this ties in with why I'm always bringing up workforce and affordable housing. We're going to bring 111 people, families potentially, which could be a lot more, where many of them are not going to be able to afford to live in this community because we don't have. I mean, if you're making $51,000, as was said earlier, $51,000 a year, 30% of your income, if you can't pay over $1,200 a month. And I would say that if you have 1, 2, 3 kids, you probably can't really pay over $1,000 a month. So anyways, it's great to see something is happening at this location. I mean, as you said, it's been vacant for a long time. And I am happy to hear that there's not going to be animals slaughtered there. But I just have concern regarding, it's going to be, I think, a lot of lower paying positions. And I get the $17 an hour, but again, if a person makes $17 an hour and it's just them, that's one thing. If they make $17 an hour and they have 2 kids, that's a totally different financial situation in that family. So
I don't see $51,000 as being a low wage for many people. Like in the last year and a half, we just got up to $17 an hour because we're having a hard time trying to fill jobs where people were making $10, $11, $12, and now they're making $17 or more an hour. For many people, that's a lot of money, and they're happy to make that. They're not going to be the ones looking at moving into something that's $1,000 a month. They're going to look into something where they can afford. I'm just happy that, and I absolutely hear what you're saying. I'm just happy that we have companies investing in the city and bringing in jobs. Yes, there may not be the ideal job of somebody making $75,000 a year or something like that, but at least it's a starting point. And if we can get people into jobs and then get some training, then they can build from that. They may not start up here, but at least they'll have a starting point. So, and I think this is a good investment, and I just thank you for the presentation.
I will say, to your point, one of the things during the due diligence process, during the process of working with the company, one of the things that we uncovered, not that they put out as information to us, but just stuff that we uncovered in talking with people that they work with, is that they are a community-minded company. They're a employee-focused company that have routinely done things like co-signed for housing loans, helped people get housing in close proximity to their site. So it's they're as much of it's as much of us welcoming them to the community as a employee-focused entity as anything else.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, like I said, I'm glad to see something happening at this property, and it will be 111 jobs. I just look at it from the standpoint of, and I bring this up. I mean, you guys hear it all the time. You're probably sick of hearing it, but we approve market rate housing, and good chance, and I would be interested in knowing at some point, and we do have some of this data. How many of these people are going to live in Inwood? How many of these people are going to commute here They're gonna come here, they're gonna work here, then they're gonna get on the 81, they're gonna drive to Martinsburg, then drive to Inwood. They're not gonna spend their money here. So, yeah, they're gonna have a job here, and it's great that there's a, you know, an employee-focused, centered, community-centered, supportive company. So, I mean, I don't wanna say anything about the company. I just wanna, I wanna continue to make the point that people who have low-paying jobs, and $17 an hour is not 15, but I will tell you $17 an hour for a single person is way different than $17 an hour for a single mom with 3 kids or 2 kids. So, so anyways, I just use this as an opportunity, not necessarily against the company or anything like that. And it is great, like I said, to see something happening there. I'm just making the point that, you know, we need to be able to fully support our members of our community, and that includes our employers and our employees. And I am concerned that many of these folks are going to live in Frederick County, and kids are going to go to Frederick County schools, or they're going to live in West Virginia. So.
Well, and like I said, you do bring about a good point. And I think at some point we should probably have a presentation about workforce development in this committee, because at the state level, and I was just at a meeting last week, one of the things in the workforce development mission is providing sustainable living wages. And it was pulled out of the objectives, and we had to put it back in, especially since it's in the mission statement. And then, so that's being addressed, and what is a sustainable wage? And so I guess in each locality, that depends on, like, how do you answer that question? So, Dan, maybe with you and staff at some point can maybe find someone that can do a presentation, whether it's to the pet committee or even council on workforce development, so we have a better understanding.
Yeah.
Joint council EDA meeting.
That would actually be a great opportunity to talk about that.
No, that's really,
add it to the list, yeah.
It's really true, because one of the, I mean, it says the EDA, it facilitates economic development activity to maximize use of industrial and commercial land. This will enable the city to help workforce develop its full potential. I mean, like, it totally is an EDA thing, so it should be part of.
Absolutely. And
the
that's
EDA.
talking through all of the workforce development initiatives would be probably, I would hope it would be enlightening, but at least fun.
Well, and I think also, I appreciate what you're saying, Kim, as well. That being said, you want to embrace potential employment opportunities. If this were a new grocery chain, you'd probably be looking at about the same amount of employment, and I bet you the average salaries would be less than $51,000. Nobody would blink an eye, because the demand for that is so strong. Everybody would say, yeah, but it's a grocery store. So there's a relativism to it we got to keep in mind, but I would agree, the more, a rising tide rises all boats. So the more we can work to increase our workforce opportunity, the better. And again, these are building opportunities for people, whether it's individuals or families. It's not necessarily end career opportunities as well. So,
Well, let me just say that I think there's multiple things going on here.
You've changed yourself.
Certainly, workforce and employees and living wage, but it's all got to be balanced, right? Because we want people too to be able to live in this.
Sure.
So is this still on topic with this presentation?
Well, I mean, I think that, it could be, but that's just, that's my point, is there's multiple things going on here. We're not going to address them all. We're getting off on something here, but I just wanted to make the point that it's not just, it's 111 jobs that the average salary is not gonna pay for the ability to live here. So,
All right, we do need to take action on this.
A motion
Correct.
forward with approval.
So I have a motion to forward with approval. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that is the last of our agenda. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned.
So, Kim, I think what we should do, since we're going to have the joint meetings with training, with some of those, like, objectives